I'm TD.
And I'm MPAG.
And we're here to save the day with the brand new Versus podcast. Normally on a Friday.
I thought you said Wednesday.
Music news, who beat who's, and everything in between. So cast your words aside, make sure you're sitting comfortably.
We're here to make you laugh.
Probably till you cry.
Dude, we can't make you
but rest
cry.
assured, there's a reason it's TD and MPAG time.
All right, what's going on? Here we are. We're back. Episode 2. TD, how's it hanging?
I can't believe it. I honestly thought last week that would be my first and only journey into the realm of podcasting. But we are technically back by popular demand, if popular is deemed 18 people.
I mean, I'm just gassed that I'm not in prison, man. I've lasted 7 days without Nintendo coming for my ass. So,
I mean, to be fair, that's pretty good going. I mean, I thought the raccoon would have been on straight on to you, be like, he ain't paid his taxes.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean,
you.
there's no way that I'm getting onto Animal Crossing, even if I wanted to at this stage, I think. But yeah, there we go.
Although
but
I did. I got a few messages, and essentially, from what I can gather, that our analogy of Animal Crossing was fairly accurate. So I think that's a safe place to leave that. You know, raccoon is evil. If you like playing Animal Crossing, you are feeding that raccoon's ego. So enjoy.
I mean, it sounds like everyone who's down in that world is having the time of their lives right now.
Do you know what? Do you know what I wasn't having a time of my life doing?
I don't know what's that.
Right. So obviously, this is week 3 of COVID-19. Stay in, stay safe, self-isolate.
We're somewhere around there now, aren't we? We must be.
It all blurs into one. I mean, for the last 5 days, I think it's been Sunday, so I don't really know where I am. Although I did take a trip to the shop, which was. I mean, it's just like nothing you've ever experienced, is it?
Oh my. Well, to be totally honest with you, I've avoided going outside like literally the plague at the moment. I've been going out once a day to get my steps in with my dog for my 1 hour.
That's fair.
And that's literally it. So please enlighten me on what it's like to shop out there in the big wide world at the moment, because for me, I'm doing nothing if I can help it.
I mean, so this story, I'm going to set the scene. So, right, I need to go and do a bit of weekly shopping. Nothing overly exciting. May get some toilet rolls if they're there, but it's not on the list. Economy ham, obviously top priority. We discussed it. You need
naturally.
Naturally. So I've got my list. I'm like, right. So I drive to the nearest big supermarket to me. And by the way, I refer to every shop as either big insert supermarket name here or supermarket name here. So it's either big Tesco or Tesco. So the nearest thing to me is big Sainsbury's and big Marks and Spencer's.
I didn't know big Marks and Spencer's was a thing, so I've learnt something today. I thought they were all small to keep the peasant people like me out.
I mean, I was getting onto that, so obviously you've got...
Sorry, jumped the gun there, sorry.
I mean, that's it, So I've driven there, and that's the closest shop. Now, there is a big... There is a big Tesco nearby. I quite like big Tesco, but slightly further afield. Don't want to get stopped up by the police. Don't want to be like, what are you out for? I'm going to big Tesco. What was wrong with big Sainsbury's? Don't want that debate with anyone.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm like, I'll go big Sainsbury's. I'll go to big Marks and Spencer's. Wouldn't be seen dead in a big Asda's. Just wouldn't. If Asda's your jam, that's cool. But don't even talk to me about it. That's another story. So right, I get there. So car park, driving in. I'm like, something's weird, man. This doesn't feel right. So I'm driving in, and I can see, in the distance, what looks like, I don't know, like a swarm. It kind of looks like The Walking Dead, and I'm there like, oh, Christ, here we go. So bear in mind, this is my first experience of a shop since the outbreak. So I park, probably mid-tier car park, sort of like, I'm not having to take, a great quest to get to the supermarket, but it's a fair distance walk. And as I get there, there's obviously, all of a sudden, there's tape everywhere. And, it looks like 28 days later is going on. And I've got people there, and there's children crying as they've been dragged to the shop. And there's old people like, I've just got to get in and get the tinned salmon. And and I'm there, and it looks like a war-torn advert for for just £5 a month, help Margaret get her cat food or something. So I get to the back of this queue, and I'm kind of divided. So I've got the monumental queue for big Sainsbury's, which basically looks like people going in for their war rations, because it's literally blankets round people, children crying.
Right.
And I wish you can leave it up to the viewer or listener's discretion of how much of this I'm over-exaggerating, but I tell you not. It definitely felt like this is what was happening at the time, thinking back on it. So I'm like, right, you know what? I'm going to treat myself. I don't want to be here for an eternity. I'm going to go in to big M&S. That was my first mistake. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what Marks and Spencer's is, if we have got I know we've actually got a few German listeners and things like that. So Marks and Spencer's is the pinnacle of a supermarket brand. So, I mean, we could do a whole episode on the tiers of the supermarket, but M&S is up there. I mean, you buy it, it's not tinfoil, it's gold. It's wrapped in gold.
Yeah, we're talking elite
gold.
level supermarket experience.
If you saw the Queen in there picking up, a newspaper and maybe a box of chocolates, you wouldn't think twice. You'd be like, "You're right, Queenie, how's it going?" She's like, "Yeah, not bad, Tobe. Just gonna grab some M&Ms and stuff." And you wouldn't think twice. You'd just be like, "It's fine. It's the Queen. It's M&S." I feel like royalty just entering the shop. So I get inside big M&S, right, and this is after a good 15 minutes of queuing, and you get in there and you're greeted by this young lad, and he's like, "Hello there, sir. Would you like me to anti-back your basket or trolley?" And I'm like, "Excuse me? Your trolley or your basket?" And I'm like, "Well, I haven't got either." And he's like, "Oh, a basket it is then." I'm like, "Well, I mean, yes, I guess it is that then." And he went from being super friendly to "Oh, well, if you're not going to bring a trolley, then I'm guessing you're having a basket." And I was like, wow, attacked. And I'm there in my Nike gym shorts, a black Vans t-shirt and sandals, right?
Do you know what?
Proper
Let's
slides.
just stop there for a minute. Because that's a fucking image in itself, isn't it? Gee whiz.
I mean, it's essentially what I would wear in the van.
You bowling in that attire and then being presented with the question, basket or trolley, when you have neither. For me, it's like Christmas has come early.
Freshly anti-back trolley, optimally cleaned, no expense spared on that Dettol. I had sunglasses on as well. So anyway, I've got past, let's say it's like a computer game level. So I've got past the first checkpoint of getting myself a basket. Now, I had a list of some bits that my mum wanted me to get for her, and it says apples. So I don't often buy apples at the shops. I go to Apples, and in Marks and Spencer's, I mean, it's probably in most supermarkets, but there are a lot of different types of apples. So I'm just like, well, I'm grabbing this, grabbing that. Go to the meat section. They haven't got what we need. So I'm like, well, I'm going to get a substitute, blah, blah, blah. And then there's an angry woman who's sort of I'm picking up some semi-skimmed milk, and I'm trying to adhere to my 2 metre distancing from everyone, which is quite hard because if you actually think about a supermarket layout, it's only about 3 or 4 metres width in an aisle anyway. So if you're sort of stood there looking at something, someone's there like, oh.
Yeah.
So I'm stood there and I can just hear this, unbelievable. And I'm like, oh no, is that aimed at me? So I take my ear pod out and sort of glance over, and there is a woman who is scorned. She is not happy. And I'm like, sorry, am I in your way? She's like, well, it would look that way, wouldn't it? And I was like, Marks and Spencer's is a dangerous place, people. So I get my shopping, I pay. There's now perspex in front of the till, which is good because it stops, the interaction and stuff. I got out, Mikey, I felt like I'd been out for about a week. I was like, that was such an ordeal. I got home.
This is basically what's happened.
Down.
We recorded podcast number 1, and then you went to Marks and Spencer's, and now here we are. Nothing has happened.
I've been recovering since, mate. It's been such an ordeal. I feel physically and mentally shook.
Dude, I say, rather you than me, I'm afraid. I'm sure you're not the only person that's experienced such a traumatic ordeal, I guess. I mean, I think that my experience so far of this, obviously, like I say, I've been out once a day walking the dog, and I think in a weird way, sort of contrary to what you're saying, is that it's kind of been, everybody seems to be being nicer to each other, which is kind of I think now that the initial panic of everyone being daft as they were when they were panic buying and everything else, and that I think the first sort of initial panic stage is now seemingly, particularly amongst sort of day-to-day stuff, seems to be kind of out the way. I went out for a dog walk, and I was walking the dog, and we were doing our thing, and there's a couple of times I live near the woods, so we were out in the woods, and it's quite cool because you can sort of divert on different paths if you see people. But there's a couple of times where you get to certain points and there's only one path, you can't really do anything else. And there's twice it happened to me today actually while I was out, where
Mexican standoff, right?
Yeah, but then the problem was we were on corners on both occasions. So I'd be round the corner just waiting, and then they'd be round the corner waiting for me.
Oh no!
But then I had this really nice, like, so it was just weird because then you're sort of like peering around the corner like some kind of like strange, like nosy neighbour, sort of looking for these other people. But then it was cool because like when I went round, I kind of sort of obviously from a safe distance, but I was having a conversation with them, kind of like, "Were you waiting for me?" And that's, yeah, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you know, we were waiting for you." Very good.
I mean, I suppose, like, yeah. I mean, when you're out having a nice dog walk and you're just seeing another friendly dog walker or passerby having a nice time out there is going to be a very different sort of exchange as to that, or whether or not you're trying to choose between marmalade and jam, and Vera's annoyed because you've picked up the last packet of chorizo and red wine sausage rolls. So. You know,
I mean, you make a valid point. I'm just.
I mean, what I've learned is that I am not high enough class to be inside Marks and Spencers, or at least I don't feel like I am, and I honestly don't know if I'll ever go back.
I mean, well, when you think about what we were talking about in the last episode of this, to have gone from economy ham and bread with no knife, #no knife life, to being in Marks and Spencers pondering over marmalade and chorizo sausage rolls. I don't know if that's a testament to how far we've come or how far out of our comfort zone that is going to have put,
I mean, I feel like
us.
if that's how that's how life goes, you start life as a lowly piece of economy ham swept out to the wind, and you end up as this freshly baked by Gordon Ramsay chorizo and African spring water sausage roll that's been served to God himself. Like, you know, if that's
where's the lamb
if that's
sauce?
how life goes, that would be okay. But I mean, I don't know, man. I think that what I was trying to get at is that people are pretty weird anyway, but given the situations where things can be a little bit more extreme, you either get everyone being overly cautious and be like, "Oh no, you go first, it's fine." And I was quite pleasant. Like, you know, there was a couple of people in there who were like, sort of like, "Oh, do you mind if I squeeze by?" And I'm like, "No, not at all." And I was like, "Oh, excuse me, can I just," you know, and they move out the way. And then you do get the absolute, you know, WMDs that are like, "I must get to the Cocoa Pops. Remove yourself from my vision."
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely bringing out, you know, the sort of fundamental stripped back versions of people, isn't it? Like, there's definitely people seem to be reacting in one way or another. But I do think generally, I don't want to talk about COVID too much, but I think actually this could, in a weird way, as much as there is some, you know, obviously a lot of really bad stuff going on globally, I'm trying desperately to cling on to the positives, and I think almost it's kind of like a reset for us, as a sort of, you know, without getting too deep and philosophical, a reset for us as sort of a society, and also as sort of like as a race. It's kind of showing us how vulnerable we can be, and it is nice to see people looking after each other, people being nice to each other, people coming together online, you know, and stuff like that. And I think that that's the real thing.
It's good to see that people can be nice, you know, like
that's
it's
exactly,
not a
yeah.
myth.
I feel like that's something that I think has just sort of, you know, I'm not saying that everybody's been horrible to each other forever, but it's, you know, there's a lot of negative press and stuff, and now that that's not a thing, it's been cool to kind of see it unfold and see that hopefully when we go back, it's not.
That's it. Once this is all done, it kind of becomes, you know, everyone's happy and the world is friends and stuff like that. I mean, obviously that won't be the case, but, you know, if we can learn anything from it, that would definitely be a bonus.
I think that's, yeah.
Anyway, how's your week been? Have anything interesting happened to MPAG this week?
To be totally honest, not a great deal. Obviously, like I say, I've been doing trying desperately to keep myself motivated and you know, doing stuff. I mean, usually I'll be, you know, I would walk to work and stuff like that, which is something that I'm not getting to do, but I am getting to spend more time sort of going out with the dogs and things. I've been trying to get back into running, but I just hate it so much. Shout out to anybody who dropped me a line on Instagram and sort of gave me some pointers on things to do at home with that, because I just, you know, I'm never going to be a gym freak. I'm never going to be a, you know, fit as a fiddle type dude. I like my food. I like my beer. I live what is actually, as we started to uncover last week, the actual rock and roll lifestyle.
The tour diet.
Yeah, the tour diet, which is, you know, largely crap. So, you know, I'm a fan of that. So I'm trying my best not to sort of fall into the, you know, I've been slowly chipping away at keeping myself healthy pretty much since Christmas, and it's been going very well, so I don't want to fall into the category of that. So yeah, I've just been focusing on that, and obviously working away, doing some stuff for this, doing some stuff for City, and just trying to sort of put some content out there for people to enjoy, really. That for me is where I get like a real buzz, so it's been...
Well, that's it, and
cool.
it's more important than ever, isn't it? I mean, like, music news this week is much the same as it was last week. No one can play a show, stuff's still getting cancelled, stuff's getting announced that might still get cancelled. So it's nice to see, like, on the other end of the spectrum that, there's a lot of positives. There's a lot of people, like, kind of like people you wouldn't see always working together. Like I think we've both done a song with Nick, the drummer from Hollow, like doing some covers with some other people from cool bands. Like, everyone's just kind of like sort of internet banding it up and doing cool different things that you wouldn't normally see, and that's quite nice.
It's just nice. I feel like it's kind of like the rule book's kind of been thrown out the window a little bit, which in like there's certain things that obviously I've posted like a cover or two, obviously done some stuff with Nick, and it's not that I wouldn't necessarily do things like that, but I just normally I don't have the time. So to be able to to have the time to do different things, even stuff obviously like us starting this podcast, is to have the time to be able to do that kind of stuff and sort of find yourself again. It's quite cool.
That's my one big regret from this whole thing, really. Like, my one big regret would probably be starting this podcast.
I don't even know what I'm supposed to say. It's
what a dreadful mistake we've made.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens when we're not in isolation and I'm having to fit this into my daily life.
Busy MPAG life, with all those paparazzi
that's it, man.
around.
It's difficult when I actually have to go back outside, and people still don't give a fuck. When I get out there, it's going to be great.
I know, man,
so
it's
we'll
hard.
just have to see.
It
But
is
yeah,
hard.
I mean, there's not really much else to report in that field, is there? I suppose has there been anything?
Well, that's it. I mean, I guess we could be like, thanks for listening to the first one. Like, back, as I said earlier, via unpopular demand, like, we have made a second one. So contrary to my beliefs at the start of the first episode where I was like, this could in fact be the only podcast we ever make, I've proven myself wrong.
Yeah, man. I mean,
and thus shamed myself and my family.
It's been really cool, like, seeing people sort of listening to it and taking it on board and interpreting it in their own ways. And it's been really great sort of hearing everyone's feedback. So if you are listening to this and you've sent us an email or a message or, commented on stuff or whatever, thanks you very much for doing that. And also, if you're hearing this one now, please do get in touch with us, because we like to hear your little stories. We like to know what's going on. If you've experienced Marks and Spencer's, that's fine. If you've been out and want to traumatize...
the tyranny of Marks and Spencer's.
If you want to traumatize Toby with your stories about going to Big Asda, then maybe we could talk about that in episode 3. So, oh god, I've totally lost
this podcast has been more about food than it has music to date.
When you bear in mind that episode 1 literally had the word ham in the title, we've talked more about food in the first 15 minutes of this podcast.
I'm just going to say now, because it's unlikely that it'll be the case, but I would have pitched episode 2 as Dan Kerr versus Big Asda. That would have been a great name, but I'm sure insert name here once chosen after we've just interviewed Dan will be spiffing. But I suppose this brings us on to as we said last week, the meat and potatoes of what is
another
the Versus
food reference.
podcast.
This is saying everything about us, really, isn't it?
It is. I mean, to be fair, meat and potatoes are probably 2 of my favourite food groups.
I mean, they are. Yeah, I mean, as they go. Anyway, shall we move on and think about introducing our guest?
Yes, I think that is a very good idea.
Wicked.
So, the first guest ever on the Versus podcast, TD MPAG, is what I would I call him a friend, an acquaintance, a colleague, the proverbial thorn in my recording side. It's none other than Mr. Daniel Kerr. Hello, Dan.
As you can tell, I'm very fast right now.
You could sound...
Sounds so gassed.
Dude, like, I mean, I really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule for this.
I mean, that warm introduction was just overwhelming. So I'm stoked to be here.
Dan, I mean, I did tell you when I was like, can you mix the theme tune? And you were like, yes, I will mix the theme tune because it's good. I was like, do you want to be on it? And you were like, no, not really. And I was like, cool. So episode 2, and you were like, too awkward to say no. So here you are. So yeah, I mean, welcome to the podcast, Dan. Are you happy to be here?
Well, I guess so. I mean, we've got to get the ball rolling a little bit, but
Positive.
I'm
Heavy criticism,
wow.
as always. I like a nice positive start.
Hey, I'm nothing but positive.
Right. Okay. So for those of you 7 listeners we've got who don't know Mr. Daniel Kerr, what is it that you do, Dan, apart from whinge a lot?
I record bands, and that's pretty much it. Dude,
And that's the podcast. That's it, everybody.
I'm not the person that's gonna say that I'm the world's biggest salesman when it comes to pitching myself via this medium. I mean, the running joke really is that no one's ever really seen what my face looks like because it's always pictures of the back of my head working. So no one, and then we're not even doing a video podcast, are we? So this is a continuation, really.
This might not even be the real Dan Kerr. This could be like, a robot.
I mean, the cover of this podcast, is it even me? It's probably not. No, who knows? Not me.
I mean, it's funny you say that because I would actually say out of all the people I know, and that's not loads, but a few, I don't know anyone who has had more memes made about them than you.
I mean, yeah, I suppose so, yeah. But it's because I haven't got friends. Everyone's just out to fuck with me, aren't they, really? So I respect that.
Dude, I would definitely take that as a compliment. That's the thing. Like, I think if you're in a position where you're getting memed, it's like either they love you. Like,
I mean, I don't really know if you can spin. He's got a really memeable face in a positive light, really.
Dude, like, it's either that they love you and they think you're a nice dude, or they're just they think you're an absolute fucking weapon, but they're going to keep paying you to do it. Because in most cases, it's people that have worked with you.
I mean, literally, I typed in the word meme into Google, and the first image that came up was a fat Chinese kid. So it kind of really says all we need to know about people that get memed.
Have you got a favourite meme anyone's ever made of you?
If I just go through the camera roll.
I've got a favourite meme that people have made of him.
Oh, yeah, what's that?
Oh, well, I had forgotten that this existed until I was shown it again yesterday.
Oh, I know which one this is.
But the Ice Age meme is absolutely outstanding. For anyone that hasn't seen the Ice Age meme, Toby, was it you that made it?
Yeah, I did, yeah. I made it when we were recording Heartsick.
So, maybe you should explain it because it nearly put me in the ground. It's so good.
I mean, it is literally probably the most like it's literally like an abomination. It looks like something out of Saw. Like, it's basically we had this thing where for some reason I think it was Josh from Hollow was like, "Oh, Dan looks like Sid from Ice Age," and at the time I was making a lot of Dan.
Let's just go back to where making memes of me seems like a positive thing. I mean, I think the favourite one you've done of me from a comedic point of view was when we were coming close. Wow, shit. Yeah, this is when Heartsick came out. And you, instead of having the normal Heartsick cover, it was my face, and it was the title Band Sick. I mean, that.
I remember it. Oh, it was so good. Oh, so good. Yeah, no, that was a good one. Yeah, the Ice Age one though, it was instead of just like superimposing Dan's face onto Sid, I cut out his eyes, nose, and mouth, and then moved them onto Sid's face to replace said eyes, nose, and mouth. And honestly, I mean, if I ever when I inevitably go to hell, that will be what torments me for the rest of time.
I mean, when you're on your deathbed, hopefully in many, many years to come, and you're looking back at your accomplishments to be like, did I get a gold record? Who knows? But did I make top quality memes about Dan and make him absolutely sick of being alive? Yeah, I did. That's a life well lived, isn't it?
Honestly, this is already going so much better than I thought it would. Fantastic.
Oh my God. There's tears. There's tears.
Effing chat from Mikey Page, everyone.
It's good to laugh at Dan's misery.
Oh Christ! Right, let's take it back to the beginning. When did
I'm sorry.
Christ. Right. So I mean, he's gone. Effing chat.
Effing chat.
That's the end.
MPAG not found. Error 404.
Windows 95. He's gone.
I'm sorry.
Right,
Serious
right,
voices.
let's set MPAG to restart himself over in the corner. So you weren't always a producer, Dan. You played drums, didn't you? That was your first. Was that your first musical thing?
So how far do you want to roll this back?
Well, I don't really care about what your favourite Lego set was, to be honest. We ain't got time for that.
I want like Asda. Let's roll it all the way back.
No, I mean, but like if we're talking like musical instrument,
Yeah.
like obviously started out as a classical man. So the only instrument the instrument I ended up getting given to learn to begin with was the trumpet, which is obviously all the girls wanted the fucking trumpet player, didn't they?
Fuck me, man. Oh.
So yeah, the coolest kid in town. After doing that for many, many years,
You realised that you were literally getting nowhere in life with a trumpet.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I think around the age of like 14, I was like hassling the shit out of my mum for a drum kit, like years and years and years. Pretty much as soon as like I found out about like music, like bands that weren't like fucking Boyzone or whatever, I was like, holy shit, I want to play drums. So like at the age of 14, I'd finally like got to a point where my mum was like, right, if I don't buy him a drum kit, I'm gonna fucking put him down. So
Fuck me.
So like we were like, I think we were in like Costco of all places. So as you can tell, the drum kit I'm about to say that I got bought is just top quality. So I don't know if you ever remember those like flats kits.
Oh my days.
No, I don't know. I don't think they're making them anymore, surprisingly. It's basically where there was like no drum shell whatsoever. And it was just like a rim that held a drum skin. And it's like the most dog shit cymbals ever made. And so yeah, I got given that kit, and like I somehow managed to learn on that for about a year.
Was that when your mum was like, actually, you know what, he's stuck at this. Let's get him like a my first drum set.
I upgraded from the flats kit to a Pearl Export.
Oh, okay.
Solid choice.
Which is a kit that people seem to knock the Pearl Export, but it was I would consider it a fucking solid drum kit.
A trusty steed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I feel like it's like the builder's tea of
exactly.
kits,
Yeah, it's the builder's
like,
tea of drum kits. Really, it never fails you.
It's just a solid thing that will just like comfort you until the end of time.
But they also don't make those anymore. They also don't make those anymore.
No.
So.
I mean,
F in chat for the Pearl Export.
I feel like we've been bigging it up, and like those two makes of drum kit gone. So
it's a good start.
I obviously like everyone studied music at GCSE, but I did not very much apply myself. So I got a C in music.
Shocker.
So I went on to try and do A-level music, and my music teacher. Out of everyone that you would want to like give you positive feedback and like life advice, basically turned around to me and said, "I don't think you're ever going to have a career in music. I think you should choose another subject to study." So
Wow.
obviously, like I went home and was like, "Mum, you know how like you've invested like all this money into me, like playing drums and the trumpet." I was like, "Yeah." The music teacher's like, "I don't think you're cut out for this." So she was like, "Right, well, just fuck off to college then." So after like I'm gonna say like a month and a half of being in sixth form, I was like, cool, I'm probably gonna have to just pack this in. Went to college and studied music performance. And at that point I was like, wow, I should probably practice and get a band together. I don't know why I'm saying wow, because I was definitely not that enthusiastic at 16 years old. And yeah, so I obviously studied music there for about a year, and then I found some band members through a mutual friend, which was the band I ended up playing in for fuck knows how many years. Started like playing shows together and stuff, nothing fancy. And after like doing some shitty college recordings, and I mean, if you've ever done a shitty college recording, you definitely know what I mean. It's you can't really call it a recording.
Was it GarageBand?
I mean, dude, I don't think GarageBand was invented when I was at college. I mean, this is Stone Age. This is a long, long time ago. So we were like, cool, we've got these really shitty demos. They're not getting us any shows. Maybe we should like go and record at like a fancy studio. So after like pretty much like working shitty jobs and everything, we managed to get like enough money together to record a couple of songs at like a reasonably nice studio. And we recorded 2 songs, and then I was like, wow. I mean, I thought our shitty college recordings were crap. I mean, this is just like one step above. Like, they were really good, don't get me wrong. Like, but at the same time, like, busting out all that money, and you're like, oh shit, man, like you're like, why doesn't it sound like fucking Redneck by Lamb of God? You're like, what the fuck's going on? Like I thought it was that easy. So we ended up going back there because we didn't learn our lesson. So we ended up finishing an EP. And that's like our band's first EP that we recorded. And essentially like that studio experience, like it's not a bad studio experience. Like the recordings really weren't actually that bad, but like that studio experience was like, I kind of want to do this. And like, I just turned like 18 and I was about to finish college. And mum was like, cool. So are you going to get a job or are you going to go to university? And I was like, I don't want to do either of those things. And then she was like, well, go to university because people who don't want to get jobs just go to university. So I, because obviously my interest in like the time we spent at that recording studio, I was like, cool, I'm going to go and study music recording university. And then at that point I was like, I started studying it. I'm not going to say the university, but like I started studying at that university and was like, cool, they will literally teach you nothing to do with like, obviously I'm known for recording, not known, but I record metal music. So my university wasn't really into teaching people how to record metal music, really.
I mean, did they kind of have like some skills that obviously still, I suppose, were useful with like techniques and things?
Like transferable skills. I would say the most valuable skill that I personally got out of university was that if you don't learn yourself and you don't go out and do something and learn how to do it and practice yourself, no one's going to hold your hand, no one's going to do it for you.
That's a fair lesson.
I can definitely relate to that, to be fair.
I mean, it's a very expensive lesson. You spend thousands and thousands of pounds.
Yeah, like 20 grand to be like, if you don't try hard, nothing will happen.
Exactly, yeah. So, like, was coming towards the end of my, like, last year at university. I was like, cool, like, I really want to try and do this, like, full time. So, during my last few years at university, I started recording my own band. And I think just after my first year at university, I did my first, like, professional recording for my own band. And to say professional is using that word very, very lightly. So, like, what happened was we were like, cool, we've just put out this EP. Like, let's do a cover. Like, legitimately every band in 2009 was like, this is a really good idea. Pop Goes Punk's going is massive. Let's do a fucking cover. So we decided, out of all songs to cover was Katy Perry, Firework. I don't know if you've tried singing that chorus, but it's
quite high, isn't it?
Mighty high. Yeah, it's quite. So yeah, we did that, and like to say it was like my first preset mix was like insane. So it was literally like, I was like, I got Pod Farm, I got Steven Slate, and I got a dream. I'm gonna take over the world. So yeah, like I like literally, I mean, that is literally how I mixed it.
I mean, do you like look back at that now and be like, 2010, Dan, you did okay?
I think I peaked too early, to be honest. But like, ironically, like we put that song out and it got like 1 million hits on YouTube, and like, I mean, like, literally, for something we literally recorded the whole thing in just one day, and then I mixed it, like, I'm going to say in a day, probably less than a day, because I was just like, fuck it, no one gives a shit.
Having recorded with you, Dan, I can tell you I can almost guarantee this is what happened. You finished recording at about 7, looked at the others and went, someone get me a curry and a beer, and I'm doing it now.
I mean, that's fairly accurate, yeah. So, and then after that, we were like, cool, so we're like this tiny band that no one gives a shit about, and we've put out like one like deathcore EP. Let's go super metalcore and put out an album. I don't think we were definitely prepared for that, so we ended up recording over a year, just doing little like bits and bobs, like at the weekends in my like bedroom, and we put this album together. One of my friends who I went to university with helped us out a lot with that, and then we like finally finished it, put it out, and it did like okay, and I was like, and obviously I was very surprised by that, but at that point I was like, cool, I've like recorded an album, I've like done this really shitty cover that for some reason people like Katy Perry a lot, so they watched it. I was like, cool, I kind of want to like record like some bands myself, so I just kind of like started, I mean, obviously this is like many years ago, I just like reached out to a bunch of bands that we'd play shows with and was like, cool, like for literally like a pack of digestives, do you want to come and like Do you want to just come and like record with me and like make some songs? Like, I mean, here's this shitty cover I did. What do you think? Do you like it?
And here's this album that took me a year to make, but it's doing really well on MySpace.
Tom loves it.
I mean, dude, that's how far back we go. That literally the social media platform where we were the biggest on was MySpace.
It was an easier time. It was a better time.
It was an easier time, yeah. But that's literally why we peaked then. So I was still in the band, still in my band at this point when I started recording bands, and then I got into like a couple of months of doing it, like I guess kind of full time, not really. I was still finishing off university, and it kind of came to a head with my band. Like we had this like couple of shows booked up in, I think it was like Scotland or something, and I'd already like booked a band in to record, and my guitarist obviously like was way more keen on doing the band full time than me doing my studio full time. Was like, cool, just cancel on the band, like it'll be totally fine. Blah blah blah. Like these shows in Scotland, like they're really good. We need to like play them. And I was like,
crossroad approaches.
The crossroad did approach, and I was like, I'm really sorry, man. Like I'm gonna stick with recording because that was what got booked first, really. And so we didn't have a massive falling out. Like we're still good now, but like at the time it was like a little bit heated. So I was like,
well, tensions are going to be high because obviously they cared about the band, you cared about the band, but also you were like, well, you know, this is kind of like, this is what's earning my digestive biscuits.
Exactly, yeah. This is what I want to be my job, yeah. So I was like, cool, I'm not going to do the show. And then like 12 hours later, I was like, I can see this is going to be a pattern. So I don't want to like ruin friendships and everything by carrying on this routine of me not being able to make shows. So I was like, cool, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to try my hardest to do the studio full time and let you guys carry on without me and find a replacement. And it was so amicable. Obviously, I'm really good friends with all of them still. But yeah, the band that they wanted me to cancel on, like this is like the first couple of months of me recording as well. The band they wanted me to cancel on was Shields. So like we are looking at a completely different timeline of me like even possibly like doing this as a job anymore.
This is like Dan Kerr going to the Ancient One and being like, I need the time stone so I can go and play a show with my band.
This is literally, this is like the metalcore version of Terminator 2. Like I mean,
Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
I don't want to compare myself to Arnie, but like yeah, it was pretty much Judgment Day. Yeah, so it's like it's one of these things where if I'd like bailed on that and gone and done the show was cool. I think they managed to, like, I don't know if they managed to like get someone to fill in for me. Maybe not. Who knows? But yeah, I managed to do that, and me doing that like one song with them, I got to do their first EP and then their second EP, and
as well.
Obviously like those guys did amazing things. But yeah, so that was kind of like
it's crazy because I suppose it is like the timelines align because the reason Hollow came to you was because of the Shields EP.
Exactly. Shields were one of the bands that really helped me back in the day, like establish me as someone who could actually use a Mac and
totally.
and know what the fuck Pod Farm was. And all the rest of it.
You had been and graduated with flying colours, the Joey Sturgis program.
I've been to the top of the mountain and I came back. I know the ways. Dude, I think that's sick because it's like to have that kind of like pivotal moment that you can look back on and be like, I made the right call.
I suppose so, yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, it must be pretty sweet in a lot of ways to obviously because it's such a gamble going out on a limb like you did.
I think obviously it is massively to do with luck. Like, don't get me wrong, you have to like work hard. But I think that I mean the reason why Shields even wanted to come record with me was because of my band. We like played like I think they either played our album release show or we played a show with them. And then I spoke to Sam after the show we like played together. I was like, hey man, like I've like just tried to start recording like other bands. Would you guys be interested? I hope you got a good supply of digestive biscuits. And like yeah, so it was a very lucky turn of events. But yeah, like the first, I definitely say the first year of me like doing the studio, like, well, I say studio, but like me recording, it was just to say it's like it's a rocky road when you first start. Trying to do it like full time is an understatement, but luckily I managed to get through just about. And I managed to finish university as well, which is a fucking miracle.
I remember you telling the story, I think when we recorded the first record with you, like, weren't you doing a project at the same time as your uni dissertation or something? And it was absolute, like, you were like, I've slept for 2 days.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, so like the last week, because when I was in university, the university work was always like second to the recording side of things, like I always put like recording bands and like recording my own band before any of my uni work, even though they kind of like correlated because I was doing a recording degree. It was one of those things where I was like, cool, I can either like mix like my own band today, or I can do some shit for my university degree. And I was like, oh, I'll sack that off. But like, yeah, it was like the last week before we finished university and all the hand in stuff. I was like, didn't sleep for like 48 hours because I left my dissertation until like the last week to do it.
Mate, that's mega.
I remember like one of my portfolio songs was this song called Game Changer by my band, which ended up being one of their like, I guess like more successful songs. But the way they like we did it was like I went to the guitarist. I was like, you're really good at Photoshop. If you do this CD for me and I record your band song, like that's a fair trade, right? But I mean, I got a 2-1, so
Mate,
winning.
I think that trade was worth it. But yeah, and then I guess the rest is kind of history after that, really. It just carried on making them sweet breakdowns with a few of my own breakdowns along the way.
I mean, so let's flash forward a little bit then. So obviously now we're in a situation where Avenue is a prosperous little project, I suppose.
I don't know if I mean, let's use the word prosperous loosely, but yes, okay.
Loosely is good. But it's you're able to like function as a
human being,
as much of a human being that we know you are.
Yeah, I mean,
whilst doing that, so that's obviously pretty neat because that's testament to your hard work. I know you say that obviously there's luck involved, and I'm a sort of firm believer that there's always going to be a bit of luck involved to an extent. But I think everything happens for a reason, which is why the Shields thing is like, for me, that's massive, because it's like to be able to find that definitive point in time. It's just like, that's so sick. So then obviously from that point onwards, you've worked with some pretty neato burrito people like along the way. I mean, I knew who you were because of your recording amongst the scene. Obviously, we're talking a long time ago now, but like that was like the first place. I think to find somebody because of their professional, what's the word? Like, you know, like the basically the fact that because you were good at what you did, that's how I sort of came across Dan Kerr, if you know what I mean. And then obviously, again, the rest is history on that one. But it's like, I guess it's kind of like, I'd like to know a little bit more about that whole experience, I guess, because it's like, you know, obviously it kind of, from the outside, it seemed to sort of spiral quite quickly in terms of, obviously you work with Shields, and then you've worked with people like Hollow, you've worked with Create to Inspire, like some like cool bands that have done some cool stuff along the way. It's like, how, you know, what was that like when you were involved in the middle of that? Did it happen quite quickly, or was it
I think it's one of those things where like bands doing well is like amazing, but like it's like Create to Inspire, when I think they're like one of the interesting bands I worked with as well, where like I don't even want to say the figure of what we recorded their like first ever single they did with me for. It was not a great deal of money. I mean, like this is back in like the first.
We're talking Tesco's economy blooming like bourbon creams here.
Yeah, I mean, to think that the first song we did, that ended up on their like first EP, which is obviously the project that I did with them.
Solid release, really solid.
But like, yeah, like I think like they're one of those bands that they were just really hardworking.
Yeah.
And I think that they gelled very well together as well. And I think really at the end of the day, it's like, really when it comes down to bands, I think, like no matter who, like I've always thought this is, it doesn't really matter like what a band's mix or whatever, it doesn't really matter what that sounds like. What really matters is like if the band are good, they're going to sound good no matter what. And it's like you can say like, oh, like recording tricks and all the rest of it can make people sound sometimes a little bit better than they might sound live or whatever, but for me it was like I look back at I'm going to bang on about them again, but like I look back at the first Shields EP I did with those guys. Now I look back at those mixes now, even though it's like early years of when I was working on it, like they were not good at all. Like objectively, I don't think the mixes were great, but the songs were so good and they had such a unique sound as a band that I think that people were like, oh, it's like part of what makes them good is the mix. But to me, it's like, no, the band are just good no matter what, really. And I think there's always bands where someone will complain about the mix, but like that band does well no matter what. Don't get me wrong. There are bands that are amazing and the mix sounds amazing, and they might not do as well. But again, that's the luck side of it, isn't it? Really. But it's like a lot of the time, if the thing that's letting a band down is their mix isn't great, I personally don't see that as something that's going to let them down in the long run. Really,
Yeah, that makes sense.
No, I see what you mean with that. I think it's like it's simple. Like I think the same as everything is like the cream will like rise to the top. I know that's obviously like the biggest cliche ever, but the clees. I've just made up a word there. That was sick. But like the cream will rise to the top eventually, and I think you have to be. I mean, I guess from your point of view, it must almost make life easier because it's like if you've got something sort of shit hot to work with, all you're doing is like polishing that and making it even better.
So that's where I would say that it's like quite lucky that like the first few bands that I got to work with made like understanding and learning how to do things like time editing and like tuning vocals and all that stuff. It's like it's really handy when you're learning that stuff that the bands you're working with absolutely fucking nail it. So when you're going to editing it, it's not like, don't get me wrong, like I obviously had to work with people who weren't as well rehearsed or whatever, but getting to have those good experiences with those bands early on meant that I could learn how to like what was the best way to time edit drums and whatever. But yeah, and I think that's just again, I'm not obviously saying it, but it's just a sense of luck that I got to get those bands in early on. But it's like I attribute those bands doing well just down to like hard work.
See, I think I've known you for too long now.
We've aged not so much like a fine wine, to be honest, but over the many years we've known each other.
We've aged like a long life milk chalky shake and a sausage roll. That's how we've aged. But no, so like I think what you're saying is really, really interesting. But I also actually think that doing the standard Dan Kerr like self-loathing attributes that I've come to know and love from you is I don't actually think you're giving yourself enough credit there, because one of the reasons like Hollow wanted to go to you was because it's like very much like a band. Like you see a band, like whether it was like a band like Shields, a band like Create, a band like Hollow, all bands that are known to work really hard, like work really hard with their songs, like work really hard on their image, like the whole package. But you can go to, and I've been to many producers and many sort of studios in my lifetime when I've gone to record with different bands doing bass or guitar or vocals or whatever. But the thing about you that was really appealing to us was that you wanted the projects, whereas some people will take a project and go, let's work on the record. You were like, I want this, I want to do this, and you sort of opened the door and sort of stepped into a band member role for that project. And you know, for the first 14 minutes I knew you were very, very professional, and then it all went downhill from there.
Is it bad that I can literally see him cringing and like I'm nowhere near him right now? Like he's being nice to me.
Everybody gets one.
Everybody gets one. But I guess what I'm saying is that our record, like, I mean, Heartsick was the record that made Hollow what Hollow is now. And, you know, like, as I said, you stepped into that seat to be part of the band. And after that record, we sort of like, well, it's been good, Dan. You're like, yeah, I'm just going to leave my seatbelt on. And I was like, Dan, it's time to go. And here you are 4 years later. And you know, to be fair, like, I can't see Hollow ever making a record without you being involved in some way, shape or form, because we have tried and yet still here you are.
Again, like, I'm changing roles, but the Terminator 2 role, I'm like the guy hanging on to the car when they're like driving away, and I've got my claws in the
I
boot.
will have
like,
my gold record. The long and the short of what I'm trying to say is, dude, is that the reason that those records did well is not just down to the bands. It's because they had someone at the helm of that record who was trying to push themselves to make what they could do better. Like, because you could have sat there and you could have like just pressed record and you could have edited the drums or whatever, but knowing you from working with you for so long is that's not your way. You get very involved, and just like a band pushing to further themselves, that's kind of how I always felt like the experience with you was, because every time we've made a record or a song together, you know, we've always upped the stakes, and that's not just the band upping the stakes, but that's you as well. And I think that's why you continue to do so well.
I think one of the things as well is that I am one of those people that with everything else bar recording, I have definitely undiagnosed ADD. I can't concentrate on anything. But as soon as you like put like logic in front
that's not completely true, fam. I've seen you sink a good 4 hours into Theme Hospital.
That is very true. But yeah, if you put like a logic screen in front of me, for some reason I can like focus loads on it, and yeah, just laser focus on things like editing and stuff. And I think really, to me, I think that's probably like what I see myself as being best at, is just being able to like edit, because the weird thing is that I mean, this is like kind of technical, but I think for like the first 3 or 4 years of like, I guess saying I'm doing like recording full time or whatever, I was editing drums in the most retarded way ever, and I was like editing everything in the most retarded way ever. Actually, I literally did this for the first few songs on Heartsick. Actually, I was editing the drums by like cutting each individual note one by one and like moving them increments to where they needed to be, like just to be like perfect.
I remember that day because I was pretty sure Nick was going to stab you at one point.
And like it was only after like I was like putting a couple of clips online of being like, oh, I'm editing drums and it's so long, and someone was like, why are you still editing drums that way? And I was like Joey from Friends, he's like, there's gotta be a better way, and there is. And I felt like an idiot because like for the last 3 years I was putting aside like so much time. I was putting like days aside to edit drums, and now I've got to a point where I just edit drums in like a couple of hours, and I'm like, what?
Well, dude, you did the in moment in memory drums in a day. Less than a day, you'd edit all those drums.
You say a day, but it's like, obviously when we're recording, a day kind of means literally 24 hours.
That was an experience, man.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I just remember that. I remember, like, that was one of those instances where it was really awkward to not laugh because the situation wasn't funny. But to give everyone and Mikey a bit of perspective, so Nick had been tracking drums for what had essentially been a lifetime, and we think we had weight and carriage left to track.
We got to the studio like I mean from what I think I know what story you're talking about. I think we got to the studio at like 7:38 a.m. around that time.
Yeah,
and this is probably like 12 hours later.
Yeah, and
at this point, wasn't it?
I don't know. I think Josh and Bobby had gone to get some food or something, or they were in the van, and I was sat next to Dan in the control room, and Nick was sort of like sat looking like, you know, someone had just taken a dog for a walk around Africa. And he was just there, and he was sort of like, he'd smashed it, to be fair, but he had this one song left, and there was the verse, and it was like a lot of like 16th and 32 notes on the hi-hats, and he tracked it about 7 or 8 times, and like every time I'd look at Dan, he'd sort of be like, and then he just.
I've got to say, this is bringing back a lot of PTSD right now.
He'd press the talk back and be like, yeah, no, not quite doing it again. And then as he did it, he'd pull away and just see Nick, like, you know, Terminator 2, red robot eyes, like, make eye contact with Dan, like, I'm going to remove your spine.
Dude.
And we'd be like, no, not quite. And literally,
I feel like that was a look
times.
that I got from Nick pretty much since I've known him. So
I'm not even
very
surprised
accurate.
by that. Like, there's not even a little bit of me that's surprised by that at all.
But the point is, it went on for so long that like I just couldn't stop laughing, and it wasn't funny because Nick was like really trying, and obviously his body was like, I have drummed too much, and then because I started laughing, Dan started laughing, and then when Dan starts laughing, I then can't help but laugh more, and then Nick's there like, are you eating in the? Because then Dan's got his blooming yogurt or something, and he's like.
bear in mind, I hadn't taken a break all day, so I was like, it wasn't like I wasn't. I was literally eating as I was working, and obviously the whip came cracking down
Jeez.
from Nick, being like, if I can't eat, you can't eat. To like also to paint a scene of how sweaty Nick was. I don't know if you've ever seen the original This is showing our age. The original X-Men movie, but the scene where Senator Kelly like just fucking just turns into liquid. I mean. It
was intense.
Oh, dude.
It was a mirror image of what Nick looked like at that point. But obviously we were very, very stubborn, and even though we had a few more days in the studio to track drums, we were like, we're going to do it in a day because like we hate us.
But this, again, that kind of goes back to the testament of you being like, well, we're just going to get it done, and like, you know. I mean, I don't know how it happens, but whenever we do something, it's like, right, like Dan, we've got until 6:30, then we have to go. 9:30. When I've left, I'm like, how has it happened again? But you always smash it.
Half 9 is a quick session, isn't it? If you're leaving at 9:30.
Oh yes, you're out of there that line. Like, Christ.
If the roosters aren't cockcrowing to the next day, then you've left.
I mean, some of my favourite hollow memories come from sitting in your like sort of like control room. I mean, I've laughed to the point where I actually thought I would no longer be able to breathe.
I think, if anything, that's probably cabin fever. And that you're
100%. We talked about this last week. I mean, you'd know that if you'd listened to the episode, which you said you would.
I know. I betrayed you. I'm sorry.
Your betrayal.
I mean, I would firmly appreciate if you could just put that over, like this little scene, just that riff. That'd be great. But I mean, I would come up with a reasonable excuse of being like, oh, I've been really busy, like recording and stuff. But unfortunately, we're at a point where we can't even go outside. So,
So you've just been lazy.
And still, the podcast is not good
that's
enough.
the not like if anything, the most inconvenient thing about this whole COVID-19 thing is the fact that you cannot give a legitimate excuse for being an arsehole anymore. Like you're like, oh, sorry, man, I had loads on. It's like, no, you didn't. You were fucking sat at home playing fucking Warzone.
The amount of people you're ousting right now. Dan Kerr takes on the male and female population of the UK in one sentence.
Damn. I don't even know what to say anymore. I feel like it's just like mic drop, boom, see you later. All of you are pricks.
So let's wind ourselves back in a bit. I mean, is there anything like that you've sort of like done that you're particularly like, you know, like you're really stoked that you've done, or particularly proud of anything like that you've achieved whilst doing the whole production sort of side of things?
The thing is, I think the thing I'm proud of is the fact that I'm still doing it. Because the thing is, one thing that a lot of it's quite a negative thing that people ask me about, but it's like, oh, is there any projects that like you really hated working on and things like that? And it's like, oh, is there any like band members you're like, oh, fucking hell, this guy sucks or whatever? And it's like,
yeah, Toby from Hollow.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, I was trying to like not tell anyone, but okay. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's like no matter what project I work on, I consider like my job as like a recording engineer to be the person who kind of tries to find what's good about what I'm working on. And then like and to me, like, I hate to say it, but it's like if the day comes where I'm like, oh, I'd like just cut my ass and like everything, I hate everything about this, is probably when I'll stop doing it. Because for me, it's like, I must have a very low tolerance for what I enjoy, because I enjoy like most music basically. But it's like whatever I'm working on, my job is to find out what is good or what would someone find interesting about that music, and trying to extenuate that and be like, cool. Say the guitar work is like the best part of the band, or like just things like that. That's what like kind of drives me, I guess. Just finding like, I guess it's like the diamond in the rough of the band. Obviously, it's important to make sure the whole band sounds good, but it's just finding out what makes that band, I guess. And a lot of the time, it's not even me like finding it. It's just it's the band just shining through by itself. But obviously, say if you're working with like a smaller band, it's just trying to work out like, cool, what is this band sound? So yeah, to go back to your question of like what I'm most proud of, like to me, every record I work on and like I record and whatever. I'm stoked on. Like I think the one thing I mean, don't get me wrong, there's definitely records I've worked on where people are like, I'm not 100% happy with what Dan did, and I totally respect that, because at the end of the day, everyone's like has a different sound and
everyone's got a personal taste.
Exactly, everyone's got personal preferences, and everyone's got a sound that they're after. And
well, it's all subjective as well, isn't it? Like,
exactly,
completely, like each individual person's opinion is going to be different.
Exactly, and I think that's the amazing thing, but also the most stressful thing about doing this, because it's like, a lot of people, and myself included, it's like where I always like to see like what people are saying about if I've like mixed a song or like recorded a song or whatever, like see what people are saying about it. And it's always like, oh, if someone's like, oh, I really hate that snare, or oh, the vocals could be louder, or the guitar tone sucks. And I'm like, even though there's like 99 comments of everything really positive, it's really hard not to like fixate on that one comment from someone being like,
oh dude, I totally respect that. I mean, Hollow on Reddit, it's like every time we put something up on Reddit, they're like, oh, Hollow have dropped a new track, and they're like, why is that dude still singing?
Feels.
Why? So that's what you look at. Yeah,
I don't think there's like a band in the world that everyone's gonna be like, yeah, that band fucking kicks ass, because like it doesn't matter. It's like the amount of people that say like Nickelback suck, and like you're like, well, I'm just gonna throw out some record sales figures to you and be like, yeah, how can they suck when that many people buy their record?
Laughs in Chad Kroger while he's currently on his yacht.
Exactly. It's like, obviously that's not like, I totally understand that like record sales aren't a great metric of whether a band is good as well, because at the end of the day, it's like it might just be promoted well or whatever. But it's one of those things where it's like, if you're trying to make music that's going to appeal to everyone, you're never going to succeed, because there's always going to be someone. And it's the same when like it comes to like mixing and stuff. It's one of those things where you've just got to kind of stick to your guns, really.
Agreed.
I really try and like make sure that I don't have like a style of mixing. I understand that I must do, and there's definitely like things like plugins that I go back to, all the rest of it. But like when it comes to mixing and everything, like I always try and like try my best to just try and make that band sound like that band, basically. But it's like and sometimes like when it comes down to when we're like coming down to finishing the record and the band's like, oh, I'd much rather you do a guitar tone like that, and it's like, oh, I don't. To me personally, I don't like those like maybe certain types of guitar tones or whatever. And it's like, well, at the end of the day, it's like, what's more important, that band hopefully being happy with the new guitar tone I make, or me being stubborn and being like, actually, no, I'm going to stick with mine or whatever. But the main thing is like, I would see it as, I've got to make sure that I can try and make this band happy at the end of this project. And
You're providing the service, aren't you? While still trying to have, you're kind of like, you know, Kayla and the Scouts. You're guiding them through. But if they don't want to win that badge, or they don't want to make a fire, you can't make them. If they want to do the not badge, I guess they're going to do the not badge.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because again, it is so subjective, and there's been so many times in my experience of hearing different people's opinions on, you know, oh, I like this, I like that drum sound, I like this, that, and the other. And sometimes I'm like, dude, that's bin.
Yeah.
But then it's like at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bin just because I don't like it. And that, I guess it must be, I mean, any producer, it's hard to kind of put yourself in the shoes of, this is what I think is good. And I think you have to stick to your guns on that a little bit, because it's like at the end of the day, I've always said with bands that I've spoken to, you know, in various walks of life or whatever, it's kind of like, you know, if I'm coming to you as a producer, and then I'm like, oh, I don't like this, or I do it like that when I'm tracking at home in my bedroom, or it's like, if I could fucking do it, I'd be doing it, and I wouldn't be paying you for the privilege. Do you know what I mean?
Actually,
it's like,
definitely agree with you, because it's like when I would say one of the because people always say like, oh, it's like when you work with someone who hasn't really had a professional recording experience before, the world must be your oyster with how you approach it. But if anything, I think it's actually like when you work with a band who hasn't recorded before, that's when it's a little bit more difficult, because it's quite difficult to explain to like, a band who has only like really like only seen like really fancy studio diaries, and like, hey, how come we're not tracking through this crazy like amp or amp setup, or like, how come you're recording the drums that way or whatever? And it's like trying to be like, well, the main thing is making sure we get a great performance, but also having like a backup plan for if what we capture isn't great. So like things like, I always record DI guitars. Like that's how I've always done it. And sometimes like I've worked with bands who've never really recorded apart from in their bedroom, and they're like, whoa, why are we like recording DIs? Like what's going on? And to them, it's like when you go to a recording studio, it's all about like the fancy gear and everything. And to me, like that's the last thing I want to focus on. Like I don't give a shit about gear at all. Like I like over the years, I've had like 2 vocal mics that I go to and use all the time, and they're both like really cheap consumer microphones. And to me, I'm like, if I can make that mic sound great and like the band can like throw it around and do whatever and it doesn't break, that's the mic for me. Like I've always preferred to just have less gear and focus on getting the performance right and seeing what we can do inside the box, basically, which is what is the kind of like recording engineer I see myself as. But
I think that's really good, mate. I think that's really fair.
I was going to say, if we transition back to the question that I definitely spent the last 10 minutes not answering, of like, what is your proudest achievement? I would kind of like almost like hit you with a reverse card in Uno, where I'd be like, well, if you were to look at your like collectively both of your band experiences, it's like, do you not think that some of the like best memories as a band are probably the ones where you played to like 2 people and like went on those shitty tours where like the promoter promised you 50 quid and you ended up getting a bag of skips, and you're like,
we've been there. I've been there.
I mean, like, yeah, like, it's like one of those things where it's like, even though at the time you're like, this is fucking shit, some of like your best memories as like being in a band are from those times.
100%.
And like, as you start to do like bigger stuff, it's like, oh man, that's so cool. But it's like anytime an accomplishment happens, it's always like on to the next big thing, isn't it? That's the thing with like big accomplishments. You're like, oh, I've done this, or like my band's got like 100,000 streams or whatever. It's like, that's really great for 5 minutes. And then you're like, oh, now I'm bummed out because I've reached that. And it's like, what next? Whereas like when you look at those like really like shitty memories of like roughing it on tour and not showering for a week, it's like, there's something amazing about those kind of, to me anyway, like like I look at about like when I was in a band and when I was first recording, like I mean I've been through 3 Magic Mouses, like those like shitty wireless mouses because they break, or like my fucking I think I've been through 3 keyboards as well from me just smashing them on the ground from where like things like Logic's crashed and I haven't fucking saved in 3 hours. All those like things of like just being like, oh shit, I'm fucking annoyed. Like I like back in the day when like I didn't save things properly, or like it took me like I'm still editing drums at 1 a.m. But it's like those memories to me sound great. Like they don't sound great, but they don't sound great at all. But yeah, like you look about. So to me, they're kind of like the accomplishments.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Of like I got through that bullshit, and I'm like I'm still doing it for some fucking stupid crazy reason.
I mean, I still to this day, whilst you were like basically about to get married and had the second Hollow album thrown at you, to this day, like how you got through, man, like is a credit to you, because I have never seen anyone in my life so stressed as you were in that period of time.
I think the day that really summed it up was when we were having to like record the choir for Speaker.
Oh my god!
The Speaker Sorry, like, and bear in mind, like we like put a day. We were doing other stuff as well in the studio, but we put a day aside to get this choir part done for Speaker Sorry, and to like organize a choir of like how old were those kids? They were like 10?
Like what, 6 to 9? 6 to 9, I think it was. 6 to 10, maybe.
There was obviously the woman was obviously conducting them, wasn't she? But she was always turning around to me and being like,
do you remember we were sat there and she was like, right, Toby, can you come in and tell the kids like what sort of emotion they should be feeling? And I sort of looked at you, and then she walked out, and I was like, am I supposed to go in there and be like, you know how much you love Granny? Imagine if one day Granny just was gone and you never saw Granny again.
Fucking
just
hell.
Is this real? And she was so strict on them as well, wasn't she? Like one of them coughed and she was like, get out, get out. It was so real.
God.
yeah.
I don't even know what to say anymore. What just happened?
The thing is as well is like the conductor, like we did one take, and that was me just like getting the levels, like stressing out, like gotta get the right levels, like and we did one take, and that was like kind of like a practice run. She was like, cool, is that it? And I was like, oh my god, you are not ready for the amount of takes we're about to record. And then like so every time we'd do a take, she'd turn around and be like, cool, is that it? And I'm like, please stop asking that. Like
I will tell you when it's enough.
And it was like there was I think she shouted at one kid to get out, but like it was really awkward for me to be like the hermit crab that I am and be like, I'm really sorry, but there's like one kid that's like slightly out of tune. Is there like
you literally that was you pressing play on that scene from Whiplash.
Jesus.
that kid got scolded.
Are you rushing or are you dragging?
Are you sharp or are you flat?
to do that to like a six-year-old kid is like I really hope that got explained well to him, because at the time I was just like, please be nice. Like we look back on it, it's like it's really funny to laugh at, but at the time we're like it was like really important that we like get this part, and like we were like 6 takes in, and I was like, Toby, we have not got the take yet. And like the parents were like, we need to leave now. You have used up your 30. Like basically the conductor wasn't it when the conductor got there, you were like, you've got 30 minutes, Dan. And I was like, there's not even headphones set up yet. So
I mean, this is like, I say, like, I look back on those memories, and for me, like, obviously, I'm sure you're the same, Mike. Like, when you first hear a mix of a record that you've done, you're like, oh, it's so good. And but like the whole process of putting the albums together, and like,
Dude,
both albums we've done were absolutely, amazing processes. It was hard, it was stressful. That it was by no means was it an easy process. Not because of the way we work or the way you work, but just because of the amount of work we'd undertaken. I mean, I remember sitting in the control room with you, trying to basically mix and go through the mix of In Moment in Memory, and your computer was like, you know what, Dan, I don't actually think I can open the project. And we were like,
I mean, I literally
No,
I got upgraded by computer. Like, did a bunch of computer upgrades when we started, because you were like, "Yeah, we've got this many songs to record." I was like, "How many?" And then you're like, "Oh, we've got these like really interesting ideas for like just doing like random things like recording choir and stuff." I'm like, "Okay, that's gonna be a lot of tracks." So like, the amount of times I got the message from Logic being like, "You've reached your track limit." So I was like, "Shit! Like, how do I like what tracks can I like compile down into one audio track?" And it was just like essentially just battling that. It was like, I would probably liken recording that album to playing Dark Souls. Like, it was just quite, like, the whole time you're just like doing somersaults, being like,
You died.
Pretty much, yeah, just doing somersaults and then you died. So, and I think the you died analogy was probably, I mean, if you think of how many times you die in Dark Souls, that's probably how many times I had a meltdown during that album.
Mate. I mean, we could talk about it all night, which is obviously something I'm conscious of not doing because we need to keep this here. So I guess I don't know what I'd like to spin the question maybe to sort of finish this off. I think what might be cool is at some point maybe we'll do this again and go through like in a little bit more detail, like some of the album procedures and stuff, because I think that could be really cool. And I don't want to sort of like bolt early on that. But I guess in terms of the achievement thing, when you sort of span it back on me, I was like, yeah, or on us, like I totally see what you're saying. So I guess maybe to sort of close this as like right now, I think what my question would be is like, what would you like the legacy of Dan Kerr to be? Like when you look back in like 15 years, 20 years time, like what would you like the sort of like, if you were writing your own sort of like obituary almost, it's like what would you like that to be?
He came, he saw, he whinged continually, but he made some good riffs.
But do you know what I mean? Like, I think that just to kind of...
I'm definitely one of those people that I'm like painfully optimistic about being pessimistic. I'm like, this situation sucks and I'm going to moan the whole way through, but I will tackle the situation head on.
Oh, totally. That's perfect.
The title, The Legacy of like Dan Kerr, is a bit like, I don't know, it's a bit much for me, I think. Like I definitely don't hold myself to that sort of esteem. Honestly, I can't say that I've had in general a bad experience recording bands. Like obviously there's always situations where stressful stuff happens and things don't go right, or there's a tiny bit of an argument between bands, because that's going to happen when you're working on something like music where it is very personal to people. I think I can look back and be like, well, the fact that I got through it is amazing. Yeah, I think in terms of like 15 years time, how I answered your other question really is the fact that I just did it. And although like I am the opposite of the Monty Python song, like always look on the bright side of life, I'm definitely the polar opposite of that. I like to think the fact that I can look back on it and say that I'm just glad that I got to work on people's records, and to me that's all that matters to me. Really. Yeah. It's awesome when something does well, but I think the feeling I feel more is I get bummed out more when things don't do well. And I think I'm going to circle back just like one last time to Shields, because I remember we did well, obviously that's first original like song they booked in many moons ago. It's like we did that song, and like to say I was stoked on it was like unreal. Like it was just like a standalone single. It didn't appear on like any EP or anything, but like we finished it and I was like so stoked. Like I mean, there's definitely things in there that like I think that I would do better now, but I look back on that and like I'm like, why the fuck is like the song came out and I was like, why the hell does no one give a shit? Like, what the hell's going on? It's like such a good song. The band's wicked. The vocals sound awesome, and like I was like, why the fuck is no one paying attention to this? And then obviously they came back. Luckily, did the EP, and then the rest was history. So it's like the feeling that I probably feel the most is probably like when a band doesn't do well to begin with. I know obviously you shouldn't care about like all that stuff, but it's like it's just seeing like bands get the recognition they deserve. Essentially, I think it's nice when that happens, but I think as well it's just really important that like you create something awesome together. Like as I said, I think I managed to just like hit record and people like work their magic. Really.
Dude, I think that's fair, man. Like it's to be able to continually do something you love. I think if you were able to look back and go, yeah, that's me, then I think that's a pretty lit place to be.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's like I know obviously it's stupid. Sometimes people are like, oh, you've got to set goals and all the rest of it. But I think it's just one of those things where
there's something that's said, and I'm definitely not in episode 2 of the podcast known to be the one to be philosophical or anything like that. But something my dad once said to me is like, a lot of people forget how good it can be just to be content with life.
Yeah.
And that kind of like, for me, kind of sort of sums up what you're saying is like, you know what, like I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I like working with these bands. I like making records, and I get to do what I enjoy for a living. So for me, that's enough, and I think that's really cool, dude. I really do.
Do you know what? I think that might be a nice little spot to leave this. You know, I think that's yeah. I think you summed up the last hour's worth of awesomeness and mentalness and everything else. Pretty,
Well, someone had to, because he essentially said the same thing for about 45 minutes.
pretty well, yeah. I mean, so yeah. I guess, ladies and gentlemen, Dan Kerr, that was sick. Thank you very much for
Dan,
coming
it's
on,
been
dude.
an absolute
Woo!
pleasure. If
Absolute
you haven't,
Thanks, guys.
check out I'm the Eulogy remake that he made. I haven't dropped that. It's out today. Dan mixed it. Have a listen.
It's actually out today.
It's actually out today.
Oh shit, yeah. Because this is we're Back to the Future.
We are
right
in
now,
Back to the
aren't we?
Future right now, so it's
Yeah.
out today.
I was getting it in right at the end. It's out now. Have a listen. Dan mixed it. If you want to record with Dan, we'll leave the details on somewhere, wherever you might find this vlogcast. I'd recommend it, but not massively. Yeah, this has been this has been the Versus podcast with TD and MPAG and Dan Kerr.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
We'll see you next week for episode 3 with none other than Nocky T from our Hollow Our Home.
Wicked.
my boy. See you later on, guys.
Cheers, guys. Thanks.